Hello, this is your host, Todd Lewis of the Praise of Folly podcast. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe and hit the notification bell. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter, Telegram, and Facebook. You can support the channel on Subscribestar, Locals, and Buy Me a Coffee. I am once again joined by Logos. We covered the state of the left a couple weeks ago, and now I think it's time to discuss the state of the right. Glad to have you back, Logos.
Good to be back.
So, broadly speaking, we had initially planned to cover two broad categories, but a third one is now developed. So the first one is foreign policy, with divisions on the right. We have the Zionists versus everyone else. The Zionists want forever wars till the end of time, and everybody else not so much. On the right, we then also have the domestic policy, which is primarily economics. That goes back, the real touch point for that was the H-1B visas on X when Trump was still campaigning against Biden, where Vivek Ramaswamy weighed in, and that just blew up. But tied into that also is Trump using ICE to then take and send back illegal immigrants. And then now we have Trump saying the Epstein files aren't real and he's not going to reveal them, which is part of a broader MAGA distancing. Trump distanced himself from the MAGA base. So let's start with the first one, the foreign policy. What are your thoughts? You've been following this closer than I have, Logos, about the divisions on the right with regards to foreign policy.
Well, I mean, shoot, one of the reasons why I voted for Trump in 2020, but I couldn't bring myself to vote for him here, is because I had a pretty bad feeling that if Trump won this time, there are certain rings he was going to be kissing, and we were going to be pulling some crap in the Middle East. And I was right. I mean, we ended up bombing Iran, literally. It's hard to set off a bigger powder keg in the Middle East than that. Like, we assassinated some of Iran's generals under his first term and stuff like that. Like, obviously, we'll go tit for tat with them, but actually bombing them on their soil, that was definitely an escalation that a lot of the isolationist wing of MAGA just did not want to see happen. And there has been, from what I've seen, two broad camps as a result of this kind of going at it. There's the pro-Israel forever camp, which is basically like, Iran's been a thorn in Israel's side forever. We can't let them get a nuclear weapon, blah, blah, blah. So, of course, it had to be done. And then there's the, Trump said no new wars camp. They believed him and they want to see it happen. It's like, no new wars. Where's the guy that was going to fire his generals in 2020 because they lied about getting our troops out of the Middle East? Like, what the heck's going on here? Not our monkeys, not our circus.
Yeah. Now this Zionist angle, which we're seeing very clearly with the foreign policy, I started to see this angle coming from how once Biden lost and the left fell into infighting and is now in what we might call an interregnum at this point, the many on the right thought that they would be in a position to push the online right, the dissident right, whatever you want to call it, thought that they could push back against the Zionists. And it turns out that they're still pretty much in charge and that, this was all just a kind of LARP, a game. They didn't actually make any gains vis-a-vis the Zionists, right? And then also the anti-war elements that got Trump into office also turns out it was just a LARP. It was nothing happened, right? They still have all the cards. And where that goes from there is a kind of anyone's guess. But I guess what's unique about this, right, is now the Zionists are unmasked, right? They're not even really hiding it anymore, which could be interpreted as them running out of rope, so to speak. It's like, well, we just have to come out now. We just have to come out and defend our interests because we ran out of stuff to hide behind.
Yeah, I mean, public goodwill at this point is dwindling fast. Like, on the Democrat side, this is the Democrat side, for crying out loud, right? I saw polls that there's a news channel talking about this, CNN, MSNBC, one of those people were talking about polls where, like, in 2017, it was something like, what was it, 52-54% of Democrats were like explicitly pro-Israel or something like that. And now it's switched. Now it's something like 55% of the party or more, I don't remember the exact percentages, is like pro-Palestine. And that's like the Democrats who are the most likely to be like, oh, that's anti-Semitism, wah, like they're flipping their lid on Israel. Now the right, who who is the only party to quote unquote ask the Jewish question. We're not saying all of them, but there is a substantial, subset in the ranks that are more likely to do it. Especially the younger generation, the Grapers. Man, I remember the Graper Wars, man. Those are crazy. Every time. Great times. Every time Charlie Kirk, one of them would come to the universities. Like, you remember the USS Liberty? It's like they were relentless, dude. Relentless. I don't think those feelings have gone away any. So as this has started going on, you've been seeing a lot of young people looking at this more and more and more, and they're trending the same way the Democrats are, but they're just kind of ahead of the curve because they're already on the right. They're already suspicious of AIPAC. They're already suspicious of, these, influences in government and things like that. So the goodwill basically is thinning really, really, really fast as far as Israel is concerned. And you're right. They're just like, okay, well, we certainly can't, play nice to get people's approval anymore. So we're just gonna go on the offensive. That the plan seems to be, to me, can Israel kill its enemies faster than it burns all its bridges? Because it can become a pariah state as long as its neighbors are basically glassed, so it doesn't have any direct threats to worry about. That seems to be the plan they're going for.
Well, that does, but the thing is, they've really only got 3 more years because Trump has burned a lot of his. We'll get to the MAGA burning a little bit later, but he's already burned a lot with the MAGA crowd, and whoever Trump appoints for his successor, quote unquote, for people to vote for and campaign for, they may not want to, because that might be the kiss of death at this point, right? But given what we're going to cover shortly, and then also his support of Israel's wars in the Middle East. And second of all, Israel can't glass Turkey. It's not going to happen. And Turkey already has basically an Al-Qaeda cell running Syria. So good luck with that.
I didn't know about Turkey having the Al-Qaeda cell. I knew that, after, Israel intervened in Syria, Bashar al-Assad fled, there was kind of like a terrorist organization kind of, running amok in Syria, some of which was like a thorn in Israel's side because it's not like they were pro-Israel. They were in some ways worse than Assad. I didn't know they were Turkeys. What's the connection there?
So the terror group that had Al-Qaeda connections that ultimately overthrew Assad, I think it was last year, were basically the Turkish proxy group. So, there was the Kurds were kind of the American proxy group. Russia, of course, and Iran backed Assad. But ISIS was something else entirely. But that particular group was backed by Turkey. And Turkey is going to back them up as an extension of their security interests. And there's already some tensions over the Golan Heights in southern Syria.
It's pretty fascinating. Yeah, I didn't even think about how much of a role Turkey is playing in all this. You're right. Like if Turkey wanted to come back and swing at Israel. Now, that's an interesting question because as far as I understand, Turkey is still a member of NATO. Isn't that right?
Yes.
So if Israel tries to pull something on Turkey the same way it wants to with Iran or something else, could Turkey trigger Article 4 and force NATO to defend?
Article 5, yes.
Article 5, yeah.
Yeah, maybe. But so what I'm saying is Trump was a very pro-Israel president even in his first term. And if he's willing to burn his political capital with the MAGA crowd in order to get in with the Zionists, and they're already, if we run with this interpretation, they're already feeling pressed and they're just going to go out swinging. Who's after Trump? Who's going to be in their corner? I mean, I think with the Democrats, we already covered this, the left, if those woke elements reassert themselves well, they probably won't reassert themselves in the way that we've seen, but what'll happen is someone will steal their thunder. So like, for example, Bismarck in the 1880s took some of the platforms of the German socialist parties, such as, healthcare, in order to weaken their cause. So it could be that some future Unity Democrat government party would take some of those elements, like maybe the pro-Palestine. That's so popular that's really easy to imagine them becoming a main platform. And if that's the case, the Democrats will not be the pro-Israeli, the pro-Jewish, anti-Semitism party that they've been for so long. And then on the right, like you mentioned, the Groypers and how Trump's burning his bridges. They don't have a lot of time. I mean, who would they turn to after Trump to back them up to the hill?
Nobody. And before you brought in the Turkey element, I was like, well, Israel might be able to, fight for time. But I think you're right. They're up against a rock and a hard place, especially with Turkey being a NATO ally. That's crazy to think about.
We also have to remember that at the peak of the Gaza war, Erdogan in the UN was actively condemning Israel.
Yeah, I did remember seeing something like that.
So yeah, it looks like for whatever reason, the Zionist clique in America is running out of options, and they've sidled up to Trump, and Trump sidled up to them in one last ride, I guess. That's what it looks like. Would you agree?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. One last ride is what it is.
Because after Trump, they're not going to really have any political capital or allies left. I mean, I tell you what, there's still a lot of guys on the right that are going to bring up the JQ, and they're going to finish that question. And with the pro-Palestinian types on the left, they might just join hands to finish it off.
Yeah, absolutely. At least as far as Israel is concerned, right? I mean, we can mock the left being like, oh, that's anti-Semitic, but I mean, what the left is really worried about is individual Jewish people who have no power being stereotyped and blah 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 blah. And so, like, Jewish people would be domestically protected on the left, but as far as Israel is concerned, both parties would probably go scorched earth on it, maybe even in my lifetime at this point.
Right, and at that point, Israel just isn't going to exist as a state because it's propped up by America. So yeah, the next thing is there anything more you want to add to the foreign policy divide on the right? I think that's pretty cut and dry.
I think I think we're going to come back to it after we talk about the other two branches, because there's only one place I can see this going, which is interesting, but we won't be able to fully get there until we've examined the other parts.
All right. Well, now we have the other divide, which is domestic, and by domestic I mean primarily economic, and that would be immigration. Now, this is what's weird, right? Because on the one hand, you hear a lot of squawking about ICE and the detainees and immigrants being deported back. But then you also have all the H-1B visa stuff and the layoffs from Silicon Valley and all of these people on the right that are like, hey, wait a minute, we don't support this. You're undermining our economic viability here. So there is a kind of schizophrenia here too about the economic question, where Trump is sort of riding both sides. He is deporting illegal immigrants, and the left is squawking about it, but he's not really doing anything about the H-1Bs.
Well, yeah, this is the chickens coming home to roost of the right-wing mantra we've heard for so long, where it's like, oh, we're not anti-immigrant. We just want people to come in legally, right? How many times have you heard that before? Well, guess what? H-1Bs are legal. There are all sorts of economic green card deals, asylum deals, whatever. There are lots of ways that immigrants can legally come in and really do a number on the economy. And so if the right's really, really serious about this, we just don't want illegal immigrants thing, then the core issues the nativist stance was meant to solve, uh, they're done. They're untenable, because it turns out that a lot of the big problems, especially at the higher end of the economy, came from legal immigration. And so the right's going to have to make a choice, and it can't, because the right has been a marrying of two completely disparate factions, right? We've talked about this so many times on your channel. The libertarian right, who is a spectrum, they could believe that some libertarians might say, well, H-1Bs are the government attempting to essentially meddle in the economy on the behalf of firms. I've seen libertarians make that argument. God bless them. Okay. But most libertarians think that, borders are illusory. People should be able to come and work what they want for the wages
Starvin'
that they
Marvin
want.
logo.
Starvin' Marvin, absolutely. Yeah, we know exactly who we're talking about, right? Yeah, that those libertarian factions are the bulk, I'd say, of the economic libertarians. And insofar as quote unquote the right, especially the MAGA right, thinks these people are a part of their quote unquote team, then you aren't going to get a non-schizophrenic view on immigration because on the one hand, people want to talk about how illegal immigration is dealing with like low wage jobs and it's making housing expensive and it's burdening our social systems as far as like our schools needing multi-language programs and whatever else. But when you try to apply those arguments to the higher end, it's like, well, skilled laborers are just coming to better their lives and, get the wages that everybody's consenting to. What's the problem? Right. So like there is no coherent principle on this. And the right tried to make one, right? Like at the very beginning of the election, like right after Trump won, that's when the H-1B fight started happening on Twitter. And Elon's like, I'm prepared to go to war on this, the likes of what you've never seen. It's like, well, that's a bummer. So it's very clear that this libertarian faction, economically speaking, when you get to the immigration issues that Trump supposedly cared about, was never their friends, was never going to be their friends, and it's almost like a couple of chowderheads on the internet warned everybody this was going to happen. Almost, yeah, many times in fact, you warned people this exact schism was going to happen. So I don't know about you, but when I saw it happening, I was just like, "Ha ha, told you so."
Yeah, it was funny. The other thing too, though, so the side that would be opposed to this, I mean, obviously we have, you mentioned the Groypers, they're going to be opposed to this, right? The generally, whatever you want to call the alt-right, dissident right, online right, it just keeps changing its name, but we all know what we're talking about. Now, with regards to like the more normie, boomer Xer base for the MAGA, they're kind of in this like weird spot, right? Because like they want the wall, they want the illegals out, but then there's this, and this isn't helping them. It's not helping, their kids. It's not helping anything. So there is this kind of like division here. But here's the real problem that I see though with the right here. The way they express this concern, it's a real concern which has real class interests, but they just don't talk about it in those terms. They can't. They can't. And because they can't, that's why we're here. Whether it doesn't matter what you are. You could be a Groyper, you could be MAGA, you could be a libertarian. It doesn't matter. This is obviously a class issue, and nobody's talking about it that way.
Well, there's one instance in which it's a little more complicated because it translates across classes. You've got the very, very low class that gets hurt by like illegal immigration as far as like construction jobs and stuff like that. But then you also have like the middle and upper middle class that's getting squeezed by H-1Bs. So I think this is even like a cross-class issue. It actually just speaks to like a broader question of like what the US is for, what the economy is for, and what the government's job is. Like whose interests are we supposed to be prioritizing? And there is no question about this because here's the other thing too. It's like the right has been harping on like meritocracy. They just have been like anti-DEI stuff, whatever. But it's like, well, listen, if firms are going to bring in a bunch of people from India, China, whatever, that are like the top 1%, and they're willing to take intellectually in those countries, and those people are willing to take like lower wages, than Americans are. Sounds like they're willing to work harder for less pay because they're willing to live more frugally, whatever the argument is going to be. If meritocracy is going to be the rallying call of like the normie con, Gen X, boomer right, whatever, then there is no argument for any stripping away of immigration, ultimately speaking, except for the illegal immigrants. The only arguments they have is like, well, they need to be documented. We need to make sure they're not terrorists or whatever. We need to know who they are and why they're here. Fair. And they need to know, and we need to be able to deal with like the social services. Like if you and your kids don't speak English, we have to like tax you extra somehow to help you pay for the services you're using in schools or whatever else. But like once you've kind of managed the logistics of this, class of immigrants coming in and competing for jobs, all these various levels, meritocracy is meritocracy. Are we a meritocracy or aren't we? Because meritocracies are cold, they're cruel. They don't care about your racial makeups. They don't care about your tribe. They don't care about solidarity between the citizens. They don't care about the government, protecting the voting rights of the polis. Whatever you want to talk about, brute capitalistic meritocracy doesn't care about any of this. And so the fundamental question the right has to answer, and it can't, is are we a meritocracy or not? Or do we want to be? Are we trying to be one?
Yeah. Well, and there's a few reasons why they can't answer this. One, because a parallel narrative to this on the right is that white men have been discriminated against for the last 15 years. So all of their lack of success has everything to do with political harassment. But because they're not successful, then they pivot and say, "Well, you're not meritocracy. Suck it up, right? It's a meritocracy. Work harder." Well, which is it? You can't say it's a meritocracy and these millennial and Zoomer white men have to work harder, and say at the same time that there's been this political culture war going back to the 90s attacking white Christian men.
Yeah, Siobhan had covered this in her last video. It was hilarious. She was talking about immigration and also, DEI mostly affecting women. Siobhan Head was talking about this. Yeah. Oh, man. This was another thing I want to talk about on this stream, and I completely forgot until this triggered it. Yeah. So after the Epstein thing started happening, for whatever reason, the right-wing media all of a sudden had a gamers are dead moment and started going on a tear about the, quote, white male loser epidemic. You heard about this?
No, I have not.
Okay, this relates to the economics of the topic, so we'll keep it bundled here instead of making it like its own fourth thing, but this is fascinating. So they recently started going on a tear talking about how we need to reform Medicaid and other social safety nets because people primarily taking advantage of them have become a bunch of lazy white guys in their mama's basements eating Cheetos and playing video games. Congressmen have been talking about this. There's a Fox News segment with Tommy Lauren and Laura Ingraham talking about this. That's what Siobhan had covered in her video. It's been ramping up like a lot. It's like the right is trying to make an attack on social safety nets by using white guys as a scapegoat, calling them like the new welfare queens in the hope that they can get Democratic support because, yeah, screw white men. Because, we know how the Democrats have been for the last, several decades on this. So it's absolutely crazy. And then Shu pointed out, it's like, well, you guys are talking about, women benefiting from, affirmative action, immigrant suppressing wages and making, intro jobs harder to get into, blah, 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 blah. But now it's white guys aren't trying hard enough and they're just choosing to be losers living in their parents' basement. You can't have that one both ways. And that's what you said. And it reminded me of that, which brought this whole nother dimension.
Oh, I'm glad I brought that up then, because that's a really big reason why they can't admit this. Because if they admitted this problem with the economy, they'd have to then give up on the last 40 years of the culture war rhetoric, which they can't do. The other reason why they can't do this is because they think that if you have money, you must just be better. And it's like, okay, but then why are you hurting me? Because I've put in my dues. Why are you doing this to me? They must, it's like that one time, 2 years ago, I was on the Christmas stream for Millennial. Maybe it was a year ago. Because it was about H1Bs. And I'm like, look, Elon Musk has all the data you guys have. He's not confused. He's the 1%. He's got billions of dollars. He wants to save money, go in the black, and he doesn't care about you. I don't know why we have to keep having this conversation. Elon Musk is not confused. He doesn't look at the data and then just misread it. He looks at that data and he's like, it doesn't mean anything to me financially. So yeah. And they cannot, this is why it's all about class logos. The bourgeoisie are not you. The bourgeoisie are not you. They don't think like you. They don't act like you. They're very different than you. And so when you treat them as if they're like you in order to somehow gain clout or curry favor with them, you just look stupid. I mean, that's what Moldbug did, right? And they don't care.
Wait, you're telling me You're telling me that whole thing with the elves and subterfuge and that whole thing that Moldbug had, you're telling me it was just never going to work?
Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. Yeah,
Crazy.
I know.
Crazy.
I
Nobody
mean,
ever could have predicted this.
no, no. I mean, the case in point is Machiavelli writes the Prince to get in with one of the Borgias, and it doesn't work. What do you know, Logos? Begging men in power to put you into their entourage never works.
Yeah.
This,
So yeah. So I don't know what the right is going to do about this. This is like crazy. That because here's the thing, like it feels like there's three factions of MAGA fighting about this. There's the boomer cons that like that Trump is cleaning out the government and making business more efficient and bootstraps and everybody can succeed if they try hard enough, right? There's that whole boomer con faction. They don't even think there's a real problem. It's like, oh yeah, let the corporations do what they need to be successful, because if the corporations can save money with H-1Bs and these things, they'll make jobs for the people. They think that any savings that corporations do translates to jobs down the line. It's just so crazy, this trickle down thing. They just won't let it go. That's one faction. You've got the kind of like Groyper dissident right faction that, honestly speaking, so many of them would just be economic libertarians. And the only reason they're like on this thing is because like they see the downstream cultural effects of immigration. And they're against it for that reason, kind of in principle, even if economically speaking, they don't really care. I've seen so many that are just like, yeah, I'm a libertarian, but the government won't just, let me have my ethno state, leave me alone, kind of a thing. It's just like, well, you guys, you're the problem. Anyway, the third faction is libertarians. Skipping them, we talked about them. The fourth faction, there's four, not three, is I've seen quite a bit of people that were Bernie supporters in 2016. I'm one of them. That when Bernie did his Ezra Klein interview, and he's just like, yeah, mass immigration's a Koch brothers conspiracy, right? You can't do this and screw over American workers. They like that Bernie Sanders, but that Bernie Sanders is gone and like never coming back, so that they have no representation on the left, and so they come over to the right because they're like, we don't agree with most of what the right wants, but if we can at least get a handle on this immigration thing, then that would make our lives easier, certainly, right? And they're like another faction, but I don't think the right can fix the problem because like nobody's going to listen to Groypers. Like Dan Crenshaw threatened them on camera. The ethno state people are fundamentally libertarians, and so as long as they have this principle that what's good for the firm is good for the economy, well, the firm's never going to decide that replacing American workers is bad for the economy. They're just going to continue to do it, and so you'll have no leverage. So it's like, where is any faction going to get any purchase to change any of this? It's just not going to happen.
no, no, it's not going to happen. And the reason why the right is in this bind and can't stop this is because the accumulation of wealth has just been a universal surrogate labor for intelligence, accomplishment, and value. And especially for the older ones like boomer cons, okay. I mean, if you believe that, then all of this just must be for the greater good. Shove it.
Exactly. Yep.
But they also don't like the consequences and they complain about it. And it's like, well, which is it? You can't have both.
They want both, and by God, they'll try to have it. They'll take the whole country down with them if they have to.
Yeah, yeah, and like you said, the younger people, the millennials and the Zoomers, they're still just libertarians, right? They're edgy. They've got 1488 in their bio or something, right? Or Austrian poet respecter or painter respecter, right? But it's like you're still libertarian. Like you're not going to expropriate anybody, are you now?
Yeah, probably not. So like there is this schism in the right. It's not going anywhere. The
So
power is
briefly, just to put it up with a bow for the domestic issues.
Yeah.
To wrap it up in a bow, both sides believe that the best people are the richest people. One side doesn't like the consequences of what these wealthy rich people are doing, and the other side doesn't care.
Yeah, and the dissidents that would reject this narrative I would say the groypers who aren't necessarily ethno-statists, um, they just don't have the political capital to do anything. So even if there are some factions on the right that are generally just like not happy with this in principle rather than like in practice, um, what are they going to do? Like nothing. And the other problem too is like the left is so done on this issue as well. It's just like, well, dude, it's just, oh, we're so cooked. The left is using the meritocracy thing against the right so hard. It's like, what do you mean you're opposed to immigration, legal or illegal? I thought you were pro meritocracy, and the right has like no response, right? Oh,
It can't.
you're pro meritocracy until non-white people want to immigrate into the country, right? So the left fundamentally just looks at this as us being a global charity to bring in a bunch of non-white people that they hope will one day help them in the revolution against capitalism. Yeah, that's not going to go very well, guys. Sorry. And they they're using the right's own, canards against them like some sort of warped jujitsu. And so there's going to be no relief on this for either the left or the right.
So what you're telling me, Logos, is that the Rahowa begins with like black woke and white groypers teaming up against the Zionists?
No, I wish. I wish. No, no. The wokesters like what's going on
They
mostly.
do. They
They
do.
just don't like capitalism. But like, what are you gonna do to get rid of capitalism? Like, you can't strike. Like, as long as people can, like, oh, dude. I bring up this example all the time because just it makes my blood boil. There's this. I think it was in New Mexico, right? The teachers there were trying to go on strike and get better wages. And the state was just like, yeah, fun. I see your point, and I will raise you a bunch of Filipinos to take all your jobs, and just brought in Filipinos and took all their jobs. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen, and the left just can't even say a word about it. They're just like, oh, well, fair. I am white and privileged or whatever, so I guess they can't have my job. It's like
Yep.
nothing's gonna change.
Well, not from those quarters. Yes. All right. Now the new thing, the new development, right? We're going to talk about this now too. Trump seems to be burning his political capital with the MAGA crowd, specifically with the Epstein list. He says it's fake. He won't talk about it. He won't release it. He says it's not real. So why don't you go into that, Logos?
Yeah, this is crazy. We were talking about this on stream, and I'm just like, well, the dog caught the car, right? Now what happens? Um, Either Trump is legitimately on it and he's trying desperately to keep it from getting out, or there's an off chance that Trump is right and he wasn't supposed to be on it, and the Democrats have pulled some nonsense and put him there. I don't know. I've seen enough shady behavior from Trump that it wouldn't surprise me if he were on it. Either way, this whole thing does not make him look good, and it's a fundamental betrayal from a lot of his base, because a lot of his base really was worried about what do you think his base meant or thought he meant when he was talking about draining the swamp. This whole Epstein thing is literally like the the avatar of the swamp itself. This idea that our politicians have their hands in the muck and they're being blackmailed about doing horrible things to kids or whatever, and they're all in on it. It's so terrible. And like the whole Epstein thing was like the zeitgeist. It's the eye of the storm for this whole movement. I don't know why Trump thought he was going to finally get power, get Bongino and Pam Bondi and all these people in there that have been talking about it forever, and then just say it's a nothing burger. Well, what's really interesting about this actually is, dude, I've been scrolling Reddit because I just love to scroll Reddit. And like, I've seen so many posts of like Trumpers talking about how the Epstein files are so important, blah, 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 blah. But then over the past weeks, I've been like, well, the Epstein files, there's nothing to see here. Ignore them. And like, there's like this whole subreddit called like Age Like Milk talking about like all these before and after tweets. And so many people you never would have thought, like, what was it, Joey Manorino or whatever? Like, he was one of them. Like, a lot of big Trumpers on Twitter are like, running cover for Trump on this thing. And as I've been watching this unfold, I'm thinking back to our stream. We were talking, I think this was last summer. I don't remember. There's like 5 things that you got from, I think it was like shillings. They were part of your speech.
Yeah, last
And like,
summer. Yeah.
dang, I'm good. And the first one of that list was do not trust Trump and
Yes.
the quote unquote right wing that's
Yes.
going to get him into power, right? Do not. They will use you. They'll lie to you. They'll exploit you. They do not have your long-term interest in mind. The long-term stability of the country does not rest with Trump. And I remember us talking basically about this. Like, they do not have like a moral character, a moral center. Like, long term, this is all opportunistic grifting, and it's just going to go very, very bad. And this whole Epstein thing, I didn't think it was going to happen so soon into his first year in office. Like, Todd, I didn't think we'd be right so quickly. I knew
Yeah.
we'd be right,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
this is like record speed, right?
You're right. You're right. Trump was not yet president. So yeah.
I mean, yeah, the year before he got elected, he gets elected within his first year, bam, poster child for proving us right on exactly what we said about like worrying about Trump. And like, oh man, what did we say? We said that the more the right stakes its reputation to Trump, the more the right's reputation goes down with Trump's reputation.
Yep.
And I am seeing posts after posts after posts on social media talking about how all these Trumpers are suddenly ignoring the Epstein stuff now that it's inconvenient for Trump. And they're straight up calling the right wing pedos. They're calling them, apologists for Epstein and all this stuff. And if this goes as bad as I think it's going to go, like, all the right that hitched their whack into Trump, like we talked about, they're going to go under. So yeah, take a victory lap on that one for a second.
I will. I'll do that on X when we're done. But well, Logos, it was obvious because this always happens, whether it was Ronald Reagan or George W. Bush. This always happens. It's like, fool me once, fool me twice, fool me 3 times. It's my fault, right? So it was obvious. Now the other thing is, Caravaggio mentioned that Trump threw Obama's name out as red meat to appease MAGA, and then immediately clicked on that too. Seems desperate. Yeah, I mean, Trump has had at least 2 confirmed attempts on his life from presumably elements of the deep state. So this could be part of that. Do you want to weigh in on that at all, Logos?
I don't know. I think the attempts on Trump's life was one of the reasons why I started having bad feelings about Iran, the Middle East, and all this stuff. I'm just like, those felt like warnings to a degree. Well, I don't know. Maybe they were attempts, and then Trump got out of them, and then they called Trump, just like, yeah, we can do this all day, buddy. You gonna play ball or no? Is what I felt like was gonna happen, and this just, yeah, it does really feel like an extension of that.
Well, because here's what I'm thinking, right? There's this ties into the economic angle, which we already covered, but this is a bit meta. There's a mindset problem here, right? So both on the individual level of boomer cons who spouted all this nausea for the last 80 years, but then also just the American right in general. There's this sort of like seniority, dues, and wait your turn aspect, that it's just not real. It's all fake. It's a complete fictitious lie that we have a political system, an economic system, or anything in this country that works along those principles. That you put in your dues, you're going to come out with this. Like say the silent generation did, or before them the World War II generation. But really, the boomers were probably the last generation in which that actually happened, and we've been convincing ourselves as a nation that it still happens when it obviously doesn't, and it hasn't for at least 20 years.
Yeah. Going back to this question of like reputation and the right and all this stuff. My conspiracy theory at this point is that Trump will be asked ultimately to fall on his sword regarding this stuff, right? So Trump has been like the nasty, evil villain for so long, the mean tweeter, the abuser of ICE, the Voldemort of the left, all this stuff going on. I think that with regard to the Epstein stuff, the people who push Trump to get in the Middle East are still keeping Trump in Ukraine, whatever. They are going to heavily pressure Trump to fall on his sword if they cannot keep this contained. And I don't think they'll be able to keep this contained. because you got a lot of like non-entrenched politicians that are new up and comers, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, like the Squad, um, like Jameen Crockett, all these people on the left, etc., that, for all I know, aren't involved in any of what was going on with the Epstein stuff, and they would love to see the system implode, and they're going to keep pushing that button. I don't think they're going to keep it contained. I think Trump is going to fall on a sword. And what's going to happen, and this is why I want to go back to the foreign policy economic stuff after we've talked about this and go full circle, because what happens next? What happens next is this scandal is going to take out a lot of people on the right. Some on the left, probably. A lot of people on the right. And people are talking like, well, who's going to replace them? And the people they want to replace them are Nikki Haley, Marco Rubio, Glenn Youngkin, a lot of, quote, moderate, old school conservatives that aren't Trumpers. So this idea is that this is going to be a giant effigy, a giant, like, what do we call that? What do we call that? When you put your blame on something and then destroy it.
Scapegoat?
Scapegoat. Thank you. See, this tells you how much of a nerd I am, because I tried to remember that and I kept thinking Scape Doll from Fantasy Star Online. Anyway, scapegoat. Yes, there's going to be a giant effigy of Trump. There's going to be a scapegoat. And the idea is all the sins of the government are going to be washed away with Trump, and we're going to get back to politics as usual. We're going to get back to the responsible adult people on the right, blah, 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 blah. And this stuff is going to reassert itself with a vengeance. And that's the dimension that I wanted to bring back in with regard to foreign policy, economics, etc. But it wouldn't make sense to do it until we talked about this, how it's going to implode the dissident right, and why these people are going to come back in and continue business as usual.
Well, what's interesting here is, for a lot of people, for the last 8 years, right, since Trump's first term, there's been this hope, this talk of like a Trump dynasty on the right. I don't see that anymore. I think Trump is, for whatever reason, is blowing up the chances of that Trump dynasty on the right. I mean, after this election, after this term, who anybody he puts forward, I think, will actually have the disadvantage amongst the Republican base. Don't you think?
I mean, this is where it's tough. I don't know, because like Trump was their hope for real change, for economics, foreign policy, etc. Trump is going to implode. But what's going to happen is, you're right, after Trump implodes, there's not going to be a strong MAGA faction against whatever the centrist Republican Reaganite types are going to put back out are. But the people who supported Trump don't want this either. Like, they're not going away. Their anger with the system is only going to get worse as things continue to get worse. And so, electorally speaking, I don't know what they're going to do. They've got nowhere to go. So are they just going to like leave politics? Are the Republicans just like never going to win again? Are they going to make a new party? I don't know.
Well, this. Well, yeah, you mentioned new party. Well, there was the America Party with Elon Musk. I know it's a joke, but still, I wonder if he's like got his finger on the pulse of something that maybe a new party could develop. I'm not saying Musk would do it, but
Yeah, Musk is definitely right that there is a hunger for like a third party, and a lot of stuff's about to go down. I mean, the Weinsteins were all about their centrist party. Jimmy Dore and the like have been trying to reach across the aisle and start a centrist party. The People's Party was a joke on immigration, so I don't think that was ever going to get off the ground. But I think more recently they've been talking to the right and kind of like the quote red MAGA movement, and they're like, okay, obviously we can't keep doing this thing in immigration. Maybe we'll talk about it and figure it out. But yeah, there's been crying out for like new parties and stuff all the time. And I think once things start imploding bad enough, especially on the Republican side, but on the left too, there could be one. It's certainly not going to be Musk. I cannot get over Musk, Mr. I will go to war over H-1Bs, calling his party the America Party. That is the biggest disgusting display of irony I've ever seen in my entire life.
Well, the other thing that's weird, in 2018 on Twitter, Musk said he was a socialist. So what gives?
Well, he could still be a socialist, right? Like, there's nothing inconsistent in socialism about bringing in a bunch of foreign workers, making a bunch of economic gains for corporations, and then increasing their corporate tax rate to make social safety nets and
Yeah,
everything else. You know, it's kind of neoliberally socialism in a way, but
yeah,
as long as the people ultimately own the fruits of the means of production, it doesn't matter what corners are cut to get there. This was Veblen's critique of socialism. Like, you guys want automation, you guys are leaning into the dehumanizing aspects of technology and the alienation of your labor, but what you care fundamentally about is that you get to bear its fruits. It's like, okay, sure, you'll get to bear its fruits, but you still won't be human by the end of it. You're still going to be miserable, and
yeah.
that's what will happen.
So what it looks like from my vantage point is that the Republican Party, the American right, can more easily survive the collapse of MAGA and Trump. Like you already mentioned, the business as usual guys coming back in, then the left can put itself back together from where it's at. And the reason I say this is because the business as usual business conservatives have always been the Republican Party since, I don't know, the cold since the 40s, right? So they're not really going against the grain. The Democratic Party has a complete crisis of identity. It isn't even the party of Jefferson, Jackson, or FDR. It's completely unrecognizable to any Democrat before. So I think that they have a bigger problem in recoalescing than a post-Trump, post-MAGA Republican Party.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I've been thinking about that a lot. Just Democrats are insufferable a lot. is the problem.
They are.
People. I get discussions with the left all the time online. It's like, well, what did the Democrat politicians do to make men think the Democrats hate them? It's like, what policy did the party implement? Blah 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 blah. And it's like, okay, we could point to how like white women have been like the primary benefactors of, DEI, and obviously that's going to come at somebody's expense. Do the math. But even if we put that usual tired argument off to the side, it's like the politicians don't have to do anything, right? It's like, here's the thing. Here's the thing. The left will harp on endlessly. If they see like a single like Nazi flag in a Trump rally, it's like, your party's full of racists. Like Jared Taylor supports Donald Trump. It's like, oh, look who supports you, whatever. But you look at how K through 12 teachers who are more likely to be Democrat treat like young men. You look at how college professors who are definitely more likely to be Democrat. Like, the more educated you are, the more likely you are to be Democrat. That's just like solidifying rapidly at this rate, right? And you look at what they do with this institutional authority and this HRified longhouse they're kind of creating for people. And people look at it and it's like, well, listen, the party is reflecting the values of its base at some level. Even if the politicians haven't done anything, if you look at the people who the politicians are representing as the core of the party, right, this is going to be an issue. And so like this argument is super disingenuous. And I think you're right that the Democrats are going to have a hard time, dealing with this, because as things continue to get worse, as far as like young people dating, starting families, buying houses, doing all this stuff, people are going to realize the left like doesn't have the solutions the left pretends to have. It's like, well, we should get rid of zoning laws. It's like, well, guys, New York City is a one-party state at this point. Like, their entire blue states, they're like de facto one-party states. You could do this at the city level, at the county level, at the state level. It's like, remember that Ben Shapiro quote? He was debating with like the Black Lives Matter person, right? And he's just like, well, you've got a Democratic police chief in a Democratic part of the city with a Democratic mayor, with a Democratic city council,
Who's black?
county, yeah, with a Democratic governor, with a Democratic president. Like, where along the line, right, are the mean old Republicans doing this to you? Like, show me. And that's what it's like with housing, talking to these people. It's like,
Yeah.
So people are going to realize that like the left is like in on it. And when the left's entire argument basically has been social and economic, and people are going to realize the social issues are contributing to the economic issues, and the left never had an interest in solving the economic issues anyway, You're right. That's just going to implode the left at a fundamental level of identity.
Well, because Logos, the American left has always been one thing: the party
Yeah.
of the working class, always.
Yes.
And
And
before we had a working class, it was populist. It was Jefferson and Jackson who supported the white farmers against the plutocrats in the Northeast who had all the banks.
Hamilton, yeah.
So this isn't the this is a completely unrecognizable entity from the Democratic Party, as it's always been up until maybe when they killed Kennedy.
Yeah, I mean, I think the right fundamentally has a base, but they're about to lose their party and their infrastructure, and the base is going to have to like do the work of like rebuilding somebody with their values that wasn't actually a terrible like elitist guy himself that was never going to represent them. The left at this point, I'm going to be hard pressed to figure out who their base is. Who is their base? Because, you know, they're not solving the economic problems the base claims they can solve, even where they have the power to directly solve these economic problems, housing and things like that. And the people are getting fed up with the way social issues are intersecting with economic issues and hurting particular people. And so, like, if the base itself scatters, you've got bigger issues than just the party.
Yes.
So after wrestling with it, yeah, I do think you're right that this is going to hit the left harder than it does hit the right, but it is going to hit the right.
Oh, it will, and it's not going to be fun. But what I'm saying is, this is not as obvious a betrayal of the principles of the Republican Party as it is obviously a betrayal of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, we can agree
Right?
on that for sure.
We can agree on that. And for that reason, I think that it'll be much harder for the Democrats to recoalesce. And then furthermore, there was a show that I did with Keith and Brenton Lengel a while ago. There was a big, I mean, there's been so many figures on the left now. I don't even remember what it was. But I asked Brenton, so what's basically the problem? And he said, well, these people all hate each other. And I'm like, oh, okay. That's the problem then. They all hate each other. And that's another reason why the left can't put itself back together. These people really do hate each other. Whereas on the right, I'm not sure they really hate each other necessarily.
I mean, I think some people hate each other. I think that like the anti-Zionist groypers, let's be honest, the anti-Semitic groypers,
Yes.
but most certainly hate like the Zionist neocon element of the party. The problem is they're certainly not going to like go to the left to deal with them.
No,
So
no.
what are they going to do? Just not vote? So you might have parts of the party disappearing that hate the parts that will have power, but they are still going to have power.
Yeah. So logos. Okay, you got it. Here's the plan. Here's the way forward. Okay. Cloward and Piven strategy, white boy summer style. All the white boys go on welfare and crash the system. There you go.
Well, I mean, if Lori Ingram and Tommy Lahren are to be believed, they're already doing it. So
good.
Yeah, right.
Jocko, good.
Yeah. Oh man.
So,
Yeah.
So I'm gonna do my Jocko imitation. So white guys are on welfare doing the Cloward and Piven strategy. Good.
Yeah. It's not happening, but it's good that it's happening.
Well, because here's this is something a little bit more spicy. I believe, as you said earlier, Logos, that there's this downward pressure from big tech, Wall Street, immigration, all this stuff that nobody's really turning back. Nobody wants to, and even if they wanted to, the people that don't have enough power to do anything. These are the groypers. I actually am beginning to think that we might just have a complete, total collapse of the political in the United States due to individualism, the sort of self-isolation post-COVID, due to the way our society has been designed to meet the needs of the machine rather than the needs of people. We might actually just see the complete dissolution of the political as a coherent, meaningful concept.
Yeah, I mean that's been coming for quite a while. I mean, if the conspiracy theories about Joe Biden's presidency are to be believed, and certainly the way the Democratic Party tried to handle what happened with the Biden thing, then 100%, right? Like you already have a really big demographic in this country that generally wouldn't have cared. Destiny even said this. Like, he wouldn't even care if Biden didn't sign a single executive order. If Biden was barely lucid, put on drugs, went out there to give a speech, and then, when it has been crashed, like dead to the world, right? If we were ran by that guy, by a bunch of faceless bureaucrats doing all the work that were unelected, whatever, all that cares that, business as usual is working, and people are fine with that. And a lot of people on the left are absolutely fine with that, period. How much longer until the right just gives up too, right? The left just wants to have like a predictable administrative state because the left increasingly just are the educated bureaucrats, and so they know how to play in that system very well. The right were populist, dissident, whatever, but if they put all this work into people that betray them and blow up, taking their reputations with them, whatever, eventually they'll just give up too. And it's just like, well, listen, I don't care who runs us at this point. Just keep DEI in check and, stop hating us out of the system completely, whatever. Do your best. And they'll just go back to playing video games and whatever. And you'll just have like two sides of the political divide that both just kind of tacitly agree that politics is too much work. They're never going to get everything they want anyway, or anything they want anyway. So whatever, we'll just have adults run things instead of Trump like flipping a coin to figure out tariffs next Thursday. I don't know.
Well, right. But what usually happens in a failing state that dissolves the political, it turns to more direct action.
Usually does. I was watching a VTuber replying to Shoe on Head because it's always the perfect use of one's time. And the VTuber agreed, except they think it's going to be an arms race. If the system can figure out how to plug young men into the Matrix to have perpetual bliss with their custom-made AI anime waifus, violence will be averted and they will just become the machines from the Matrix, and men will just literally like live in the pods or whatever.
I mean, I think see, here's the problem with that though, right? Do you remember with Meta where they tried to have people live permanently inside Meta? They got sick, they vomited, and then they just stopped.
Yeah, no, they'd have to be completely unconscious. It would be like in the Matrix where they're like unconscious, plugged in, and just, it would be like the eternal pleasure machine we always think about in thought experiments in philosophy.
Right, but I guess I don't know how long that person could survive in that state. I think, they wouldn't, if they're not conscious, then you don't need a pleasure machine.
Exactly. And if they die quickly, then that's just one person that would have revolted anyway. What matters is that the young fighting age guys that would burn the system down voluntarily plug themselves in and remove themselves by whatever means necessary.
Well, right, but there's another problem though, right? Because the left doesn't want to discriminate against people that are melanin enriched. What about those people blowing things up? Hispanics, African Americans, they might do that, right?
They might. We'll see. I mean, at that point, it wouldn't be like the complete dissolution of politics into violence. It would be a couple demographics having violence, some demographics just voluntarily opting out of the system. And then it's going to be a question of AI robot attack dogs, basically.
I mean, you see, here's the other thing too, though, right? Because let's say that there is this up and coming sort of like stasis where the political is kind of like in limbo and doesn't really exist, but we also don't really have open warfare yet. The real problem, though, in keeping any of this going is, as you and I have talked about on many other streams before, the sort of financialization that keeps all of this going. Because there's so many ticking time bombs that any single one of them could just, nobody shows up to work the next day because of whatever financial catastrophe. And then it's over. Just like in the USSR, right? But we don't really know how or when that's going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically the issue. I mean, if the system gets desperate enough as an incentive to get people to plug themselves in the machine, they might just forgive their student loans. Like, yeah. We'll forgive your student loans. Just go in the pod, lower your carbon footprint, don't bother anybody else ever again, and you'll be good to go. They'll have to try to find very creative ways of dealing with this issue.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, euthanasia is going to be their go-to. I've talked about this before. It's the most economical way to deal with the problem. Everybody walks in and nobody walks out.
Yeah, for sure. I think they'll be pushing it very, very hard in the next couple decades on the elder generation because of our population pyramid, because of how much worse it's getting. People aren't having kids, etc. And I don't think the way our system of immigration is working, or any Western society system of immigration is working, is going to offset the broad base needed to support these people at the top of the pyramid. So
now, I guess the one thing I could also add to this is, if a real third party does coalesce, then the political won't die; it will be transformed. That's another possibility too, right? There could be, due to material conditions of third party developing, that then we can't see it now because we don't know what those future conditions will be. But assuming these people don't go away, like you said, what are they going to do? Well, that could be one thing. And that will be a whole different arc, whole different fork in the road.
Yeah. Will there be a viable third party or won't there be is going to be like the ultimate question that determines everything else.
And yeah, sitting on top of all of this is, thermodynamics. This thing isn't going to work. It's going to end. The question is how. Is it going to end with people rising up against it, which is what we all sort of imagine, hope, and fantasize about? Or is it just going to collapse under its own weight? That will happen. Okay, that's going to happen. The question is when and how. And the other questions are up in the air.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Those seem like pretty good closing words to me.
All right. Well, thank you, Logos. And I hope everybody enjoyed our follow-up on the state of the right. So we've covered the state of the left. We've covered the state of the right. We're caught up now with current events. And we just have to watch history unfold. So thanks again, Logos. It's always a pleasure having you on.
Always fun being here.
Todd Lewis of the Praise of Five podcast, signing off.